Good morning. Welcome to London. Yes. Is it, who's first time in London? Oh, wow, about half of you. Is that first time in England, I assume, because there's nowhere else really worth visiting as a Londoner myself. This is a fantastic city and it's a beautiful city, and you're seeing it at its best because July is a wonderful month. August is a wonderful month in the UK, and then the rest aren't. This is really when you should be seeing England. I know this because I was born in London, and I left London when I was about 6 weeks old. So it wasn't entirely my own choice. And I went to Brighton, and I grew up in Brighton. But then I attended the University of London, but in Paris. I know it sounds strange. It is strange, and I'm still dealing with that at the moment. But I attended the University of London, and then I did my PhD through the University of London in Paris. And then I got a certificate from an institution, in fact, that I hadn't really attended. It feels a bit strange, but it's great to be back here because I'm getting to know this city, and I've been back here for a few years now, and every time I come back I'm struck by how beautiful it is, how much history there is all around us, and it's really a wonderful place to have a conference because London is a true international city, and it's very, very diverse. And so our sort of watchwords: international, intercultural, and interdisciplinary. And we are here, and this is what I think is quite amazing. We're more than 750, and we are from more than 75 countries. And that's quite amazing. So some people talk about diversity, but don't really deliver it. It's just a box ticking exercise. For us, diversity is the very core of what IAFOR is about. It's about comparing and contrasting from your own different national, cultural, regional backgrounds. And what I would like to do now is just bring your attention to page 6 of the program. And on page 6 of the program, you will see that we have a scorecard of countries. So if you're from that country, I'd ask you to put your hand up or shout out so we get some idea of where people are from. But on one point, and that means one person. Now, bear in mind, these are people from these institutions, and lots of people are from institutions, but not actually from that country. So there's sort of an extra layer of international, intercultural. So Ukraine, Tunisia, Tanzania, Sri Lanka, Slovenia, Slovakia, Peru, Paraguay, Kazakhstan, Ivory Coast, Iraq, Iceland, Georgia, Finland, Costa Rica, Botswana, Albania on 1. On 2, Uzbekistan, Trinidad and Tobago, Switzerland, Norway, Netherlands, Mongolia, Mauritius, Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt, Cyprus, Algeria. On 2. Thank you. On 3, Vietnam, Sweden, Qatar, Morocco, Lithuania, Ghana, France, Ecuador, Bahrain, Austria. On 4. Sorry, 3 is the number of hours sleep I've had last night because I've come in from Japan, so I'm totally jet lagged. On 4, Latvia, Ireland, Hungary, Croatia, Belgium, Pakistan. No, not Pakistan. It's on 5, Belgium. That's the last one. On 5, Pakistan, New Zealand, the Czech Republic, Colombia. Yes, Colombia? No, just yes in general to Colombia. You like Colombia? Very good. Greece on 6, Greece, Chile. On 8, Portugal, Nigeria, Mexico. Whoa, where's that? Nigeria, excellent. We have Italy on 11. No Italians? Yeah, still morning coffee. Singapore, Brazil, Australia on 12. Yes, what was that? Australia? Okay. Indonesia on 13. Turkey on 16. Philippines, Malaysia also on 16. Wow. Well, we've got the Philippines fan club in. Excellent. Leading the way. On 18, Spain and Japan. Any Japanese? Still flying, maybe. The UAE and Saudi Arabia on 19. Yes? Yes.
Via London.
Where?
Via London. So I'm a bit due on.
Via London. Well, we've all got stories. We've all got stories. South Korea 20. On 21, Thailand, China. Good. On 23, India. All together. See, that's the thing. You're grouped at the moment. Your job is to degroup yourself and to speak to people from other countries. I know it can be uncomfortable, but this is the job. Canada, 27. Israel, 28. Taiwan, 37. Very good. South Africa, 40. A bit of decorum, please. This is an academic conference. Hong Kong, 40. Well, okay. The United States, 44. Oh, that was a rather pathetic US representation. And I'm sure the quietest, 94 for the United Kingdom. Well done. Okay, so you are from all over the world, and this is what IAFOR is about. IAFOR is a Japanese-based organization. We're based in Nagoya. Our home research center is out of Osaka University, and there is a great history between these two countries, the UK and Japan. First of all, they're both islands, but for Japan in the middle of the 19th century, when it was looking to modernize, it sent people to a secular university. And that secular university was the University of London and UCL. And a lot of the earliest pioneers of the sort of Japanese modernization came here. And so that's what we're doing a little bit in sort of coming back. So again, I'm one of those people who identifies, or I would be marked as coming from Japan. I live in Japan, but in actual fact, I'm originally from the UK. So it's a great thing to have that. Who is from one country, but lives and works in another? Okay, so we really are a great bunch of misfits. And that intellectually is very, very exciting. And it's very interesting to have people to come together here in a conference. And this is the serious bit with the disclaimer, is getting people from different countries, nationalities, backgrounds, places, spaces together in an environment like this, in a conference where you have dialogue and where you have peaceful dialogue and where you have the exchange of ideas, is in absence of war, conflict. And in the spaces where civil society is not terribly strong or where it's weak, we academics must perform a role that is all the more important, because we have governments often where the moral responsibility is somewhat abdicated. So these spaces like IAFOR, which can be seen as like track 2 places, are all the more important. So please make sure over the next few days that you get to meet people from as many different countries, exchange ideas, and exchange what you're doing. So thank you very, very much, and welcome to London. Okay, my job is now to introduce our first speaker. And our first speaker is Professor Li Wei, who's the Dean and Director of UCL's Institute of Education. And the Institute of Education is just across the way. It's in a brutalist building, which is brutal, but I think quite beautiful. And we held our conference there 2 years ago. And unfortunately, we shifted because they were redoing the toilets, I think. And they went over a big reconstruction project, and we shifted just across the way to SOAS. But we're very, very happy that Li Wei has decided to come and give a sort of a special address on behalf of the University of London, the UCL. I'm attached to the University of London through the Bartlett School, through UCL, through the Bartlett School as an honorary professor. During the COVID period, we had Professor Li Wei, who came and gave a keynote speech for us online. He's a very distinguished academic in his own right, and he's since become an administrator of what is much vaunted as the world's #1 school of education. So, Professor Li Wei, would you please come and give our special welcome address?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. And good morning, everyone, and good day to people who are online. I know we have lots of people online, in fact, more people online. I'm really delighted to welcome you on behalf of UCL Institute of Education, especially, has been in partnership with IAFOR for these conferences over many years. In fact, I first knew Joe through Birkbeck when I was at Birkbeck through my good friend Professor Jean-Marc Wall. And I wanted to, I have a couple of slides. Oh, right, okay. So as Joe was saying, the conferences IAFOR has been organizing are in partnership with Birkbeck and in affiliation with my current institution, UCL, and of course, physically taking place in SOAS. These three institutions are, I think, chosen and involved for very good reasons, because they stand for quite distinctive missions. Birkbeck is for lifelong learning. It's University of London's night college. All the teaching is done in the evenings for students typically over 21-year-old. Without standard qualification, anybody can go and do degree courses in that university. Is really for lifelong learning. Whereas SOAS is specialized in work on and involving scholars from the global south, very much involved in the decolonizing perspective and all that research and education. Very important to many of you. If you look at the program you have here, it's lots of the presentations are adopting the decolonizing and global south perspective, involving researchers from the global majority as well. And my current institution, UCL, has a proud history of what we call disruptive thinking for nearly 200 years, very much a pioneer in the higher education in this field. So I'm very, very pleased that the conferences are in partnership with these three distinctive organizations. I am, as Joe said, Director and Dean of the Institute of Education, which is a faculty within UCL, is one of 11 faculties, and Bartlett, where he is affiliated, is another faculty, and has been ranked as world #1 in QS for education for the last 10 years. No university has ever done this in any subject. So we're very, very proud of it. And our mission is very much, what is saying there, challenging, questioning, and impacting for life. So we want to transform individuals' lives and society through education and through research. And we take a very broad view of what we mean by education. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about a very recent project that we have been commissioned by the UK Government Department of Education. In fact, I'm going in a minute to DFE for our first board meeting about this. We're launching that, and that is the Languages Hub scheme. The UK government, as some of you may know, has decided to support schools and education in general, especially subject leadership through these subject hubs. So there are maths hubs, there are computer science hubs, English hubs, music hubs, and the latest addition is the languages hub. And I know one of the themes of this conference is language learning, and I am a professor of applied linguistics myself. So the languages hub is a new scheme that will start formally in September, to establish a national consortium for languages education in schools. We're going to have 25 lead school hubs that will specialize in language teaching and learning to help over 100 partner secondary schools, state schools, to strengthen and expand language education, language offerings of different languages to GCSE level. And that is a very exciting new scheme that we aim to transform language education in secondary schools across England. This is built on the existing Mandarin Excellence Program, again funded by DFE, that is led by the IOE. And the new national consortium will have a ring-fenced scheme for German, because German has been on decline for the last 20 years in secondary schools in England, unfortunately. Our vision is we believe that languages and intercultural agility can help to foster universal understanding and contribute to the building of a peaceful, harmonious world future. So I'm very glad to see these keywords in your program: international, intercultural, and interdisciplinary, and very much a part of our vision as well. And we recognize that global Britain really needs more and better language skills. So that's one of our key objectives. Our mission is to fulfill this potential. We must leverage the value of all our languages, including community languages, of which there are many, many, many in the UK, to provide high quality language teaching in schools. And this is really important. Our mission is to raise a standard. Our aim is to develop, support, and future-proof a collaborative network of schools and provide continuing professional development opportunities for teachers and subject and system leadership across England, and improve the learning opportunities and the outcomes of school pupils. And we really believe in collaboration. And this is very, very important for us. Creativity, collegiality, these key C words, as it were. To build capacity in languages across the regions, we will listen to teachers and pupils and develop core and bespoke training to meet their language learning needs. So working together with schools, with partnership institutions, that the cultural institutes, British Council is our lead partner, and so is Goethe Institute. We are really working towards global Britain through languages and through enhancing intercultural competency. So that's our aim, and you will hear more from my colleague Andrea later on about the work and about her work in particular on language learning. Many of you will be presenting your own work from different perspectives. I'm really looking forward to hearing your presentations. Enjoy London, enjoy the conference. Welcome.
Thank you, Professor Li Wei. I was a bit thrown by the voice from above, from somewhere. But we're very, very proud to to have you come and address us and also speak to that to the use of languages, because we come from so many different places. For a lot of us, English is not our first language, and so we're presenting in a language that's not our own. And I've done that in French because French was my language, and I know how difficult it is to present in a language that's not your first language. And so that's something that I think we need to be very mindful of when people are presenting. We are a very flat organization, and we are about nurturing ideas and about nurturing people as well as they come to present. So some people will be presenting in a conference for their first time and in a language that is not their first language. So I really encourage you to help rather than throw stones. I mean, you can do both, but it is an academic conference. Okay, because I forgot this, we're going to go on, and I won't go through the entire Global Programme Committee, but you will see a few familiar faces here. That's me. I was thinner when that was taken. And then you can see Professor Jun Arima, who's with the University of Tokyo, Professor Anne Boddington, who will be speaking to us today, also Professor Lockie, who will be addressing us today, Donald Hall, Jim McNally, Haruko Sato of Osaka University, who directs our research centre there, Grant Black, who you may have seen upstairs helping on the registration. He's a professor of management, and we thought, who better than a professor of management to manage some of the things up there. Professor Dexter De Silva, Professor Gary Swanson, Professor Baden Offord, Professor Frank Ravitch, and Professor William Baber. You can see that's all listed in the programme. And the faces there for the ECLL and ECA Programme Committee: Kwame Akyampong, Anne Boddington, Bruce Brown, Matthew Coates, Mehmet Demir, Jean-Marc Devale, Donald Hall again, Joe Van Herwegen, Tamsin Hinton-Smith, Barbara Lockie, James Rowlands, and Gary Swanson. And the EGEN Programme Committee: Dimitrios Bouhalis, Darina Kadar, Jane Bidolf, Stefano Capolongo, Karina Dantes, Ava Fatah, Eddie Devala, Isaiah Duraseye, Joseph Falzon, myself. I'm basically a note taker. Paul Higgs, Fernando Loizides, Elena Petalos, Eleftheria Savopoulou, Anastasios Telios, and Greg Williams. Please join me in thanking them for their work behind. And I would also like to acknowledge our scholarship winners. That's a difficult one to start with. I should have practiced that one. Vasiliki Agnagnostopoulou, Emma Chen, Idil Karpaz, Biaz Nabila, Dewi Novita, Tayyiba Ruhi, Faten Slimani Alui, and Anton Pushpalaja Thammathasan. Please acknowledge them. They've been selected as recipients of the honor. And now we're in the United Kingdom, and I have two cards to show you. Who plays soccer? Soccer, football. You know what football is? Do you know what this is? Yes? Do you know what this is? Yes. Okay. This means 5 minutes. This means you have 5 minutes left. This means stop. Okay? And academics are not terribly good at stopping talking. So please be mindful of this, that during the sessions, we ask that you please keep time, keep to your slots, and also ensure that you're not running overtime when you're doing the things. Okay, we will now move on to our second address. And this is IAFOR Provost and Executive Vice President Anne Boddington. She's making her way onto the stage because she broke her foot. And Anne Boddington is Pro-Vice Chancellor at Middlesex University, and she also serves as Executive Vice President of IAFOR, and she chairs and has worked with the Research Excellence Framework both in the UK and several other different countries around the world. And she is helping to strengthen the academic structures that IAFOR has. And she will be addressing us today, Professor Anne Boddington.
Hello, everybody, and I will try and not get a red card, so I won't go on too long. Can I just add my welcome on behalf of IAFOR? You can probably tell I'm from the UK. I don't live in Japan, I live in the UK. So it's just fantastic to see so many people here in real life and rather than on screen, and we've done a lot of IAFOR on screen recently. A little introduction to me, just so you know who I am. I'm actually trained as an architect originally, cultural geographer, which was also at the University of London, but Royal Holloway. And I was educated in the polytechnic sector. So I was educated in a practical education. And I've stayed in that practical education ever since, really. I'm also a professor of design innovation, which when people ask me what that means, it actually means making plans and getting them done. So I'm the professor of making plans and getting things done. I was also, for a long time, one of the privileges of my career, I think, which is really important to so many people here who may be starting their academic careers, is I started as a part-time teacher. I was an architect, spent a little bit of time teaching others. I now, as Joe said, I'm now Pro-Vice Chancellor and have been in senior management of universities for about 25 years, which doesn't seem quite possible. But I was Dean of Arts and Humanities at the University of Brighton for nearly 20 years, or in senior management there, Pro-Vice Chancellor of Research, Business and Innovation at Kingston. And then I retired twice. Believe it or not, I just can't keep away from higher education. So I came back to Middlesex because they asked me to reconstruct really their research and knowledge exchange structures for the university. So that's what I'm doing at the moment in various ways. But all those jobs have really helped me work across disciplines. So I've spent all my time not only working in architecture, which I taught for about 12, 15 years in total, but one of the things that's always interesting when you come to an interdisciplinary conference is, and I was reflecting on this morning, was that a lot of the time, particularly in the arts and humanities, and to a certain degree in the social sciences, most of the audience probably here, I was working with people who were fighting for their discipline. They were literally fighting to ensure their discipline survived. You know, we're busy losing crafts. We've lost an awful lot of language education in this country. And so that kind of sense that I was trying to get people to talk across disciplines when what they were doing was fighting just to get a discipline to survive, whether it was French. And Joe and I met in Brighton about 10 years ago, but his mum actually was in my faculty, you know, fighting to keep French alive. And I think it's one of those things to remember, and we all need to remember it, I think, now, whether in the UK or elsewhere. Higher education is going through a pretty tough time at the moment. And so I've spent a long time both championing interdisciplinarity, but also recognizing that so many of us come from disciplines that we really need to make sure they survive in some way. And both are required for interdisciplinary dialogue. So I've actually moved in my career, which is another thing that I think has helped that interdisciplinary work, from a career as a sort of part-time teacher right the way through to leading parts of universities. And what I do now, and an awful lot of what I do, particularly since I retired, is to look at the structures of higher education. I've run centres for excellence in learning and teaching, particularly education that sits outside or takes education beyond the boundaries of the academy. I'm really interested in how you take it into museums, libraries, what they call the glam sector, which really appealed to me, which is galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, and how we take our education and our scholarship and work with those other public institutions to take education into the public domain. The other thing I've spent an awful long time doing, and I'm probably one of those geeks that I love peer review for what I learn, actually. Selfishly, it's what I learn when I read other people's work. And I've spent an awful long time in public service as a peer reviewer. I was one of the early advocates for having an arts and humanities research board before we had an arts and humanities research council in this country. And I've spent a long time working for what we call the UK's research and innovation, including, as Joe referred to, the dreaded audits that we do for about every 5 or 6 years for the used to be called the research assessment exercise. It's now called the research excellence framework. And for my sins, after I retired, the last time was to chair the sub-panel 32, which is the art and design history, practice and theory for the UK. And I've been involved in those kind of exercises across the world. But my main interest in that is really how you design structures that best stimulate confidence in people, conversation and curiosity, both in students and in staff. There's no good one community of scholars being confident, conversational and curious if the other side isn't. So I'm really interested in how those things come together. And my work now really looks at governance, educational and research structures, and really the impact they have on both on learning in terms of students, but more importantly, I think, on the careers of young academics, which is one of the reasons I think this conference is so important. I think whatever challenges we face in the world, whether that's climate change, conflict, wars, and whether we like it or not, an awful lot of the world is often set up didactically in opposition to one another. And I think that's where IAFOR comes in for me. So if IAFOR is a place for conversations, building confidence and to help us remain curious, I started this journey and I realized today looking at the program that it was 10 years ago that I spoke at an IAFOR conference at Joe's invitation in Brighton. And one of the fantastic things was I encountered an extraordinary array of people. I heard and saw creative work. I encountered new cultural ideas, and I met many academic colleagues from different disciplinary backgrounds. They were welcoming, they were thoughtful, and they were all reaching out beyond their immediate context. And I've been involved in IAFOR ever since, really, because I think whether we come from big institutions or small institutions, and whether we're at a big conference or a small conference, I think those opportunities to do something, which is to have a conversation beyond your discipline, beyond the person that you work with every day, is really vital. Most of us struggle to meet the people at the other end of the corridor, except on email. And I think that's increasingly the case in institutions, and it's increasingly the case post-COVID. And I think this is such an opportunity in real life. And I hope for those online, you can engage in that in some way and can come in real life at some point. But I think that sense that IAFOR can encourage us to think about dangerous ideas, think about all of those sorts of things that burst those disciplinary bubbles every now and again, and just think about how those things come together. So I think IAFOR is a really fantastic, in that sense, interdisciplinary platform. And you've heard every speaker, I think, probably say the same thing: interdisciplinary, intercultural, and international. But the one I think we need to return to, and some of the work that I've done with Joe in recent years, and certainly thinking post-COVID, is really to think about what interdisciplinary and interdisciplinarity means. We often, it rolls off the tongue really easily, and everybody thinks it's about how we all come together. But actually it's hard. It's really hard to do, and it's really hard to live it. And when we were doing the last Research Excellence Framework, the panel had many very long discussions about this, and we came to a number of sort of settled understandings of what interdisciplinary means and what it means to practice. One of them is the strength, rigor and scholarship of the discipline itself, and relishing that and treasuring it. Actually, good scholarship and good research is really, interdisciplinary knowledge is really critical to interdisciplinarity. But the other side of that is the willingness and openness. And the thing we called it was the hospitality of a disciplinary community. Just to be able to give time, and that's what a conference in a sense is for, and to welcome ideas that really examine, if you like, the intersectionality of disciplines, how they cross and where they intersect, merge, fuse, and affect one another. Knowledge is a messy business. And just when you think, oh, I've got that idea sorted, something kind of cuts across it. And I think that treasuring that interdisciplinarity alongside disciplinary knowledge is so vital in what is a complicated or complex world, at least. And I think the great thing about IAFOR, if you follow us, and I would encourage you to do that, is as we move in a sort of caravan around the globe over the year. And London is definitely a good place to be in the summer. I'd say it's a good place to be for much more of the year than Joe might. But I think that's one of the things that's fantastic about that is that we can grasp a set of ideas here and we take them on a journey. We take those ideas to another place. We take them to Japan, we take them to Hawaii, we take them to the East Coast of the States. We took them to France very recently, and I understand to Bali only a couple of weeks ago. So those ideas travel, and as they travel, they land in different places differently. And I think that's such a really rich and important opportunity to think about how, as we move around, different cultures and different views that we have across the world actually resonate. So just a little bit from me about me being here, really, in that context. We have taken quite a lot of time to just rethink what the conference might be. And so I took up this role with Joe at the end of last year or beginning of this. And it's really to think about how that dialogue and discourse and interdisciplinary conversations can actually happen. And that's really my role in all of this, just so you understand. And I think it's just to encourage you to give time, to listen and learn, and to give space to others to do the same, much as Joe has already said. But I think we're also really interested in how you can engage with us and what ideas you have as a community to think the conference maybe differently. We're going to try some experiments this morning, I hope, some interactive experiments, but I think so often some of the best ideas come from all of you, from being here and having conversations. And I think it's actually how do we scale up those conversations, give you new platforms to take those ideas around the world in different ways, and perhaps come back here next year with fresh perspectives. So I'm wearing red today so I can be seen. I can't run very fast because I've broken my leg. So I'm captive and I'm really here to hear from you. So please, if you've got ideas or if you want to talk about ideas or any of those sorts of things, please do capture me and tell me what those ideas are. My role is really to support you in all of that. So I'll end there. A very warm welcome both to London, to SOAS, and to IAFOR, of course. And I hope you enjoy the next 4 days. Thank you very much.